football fever, uniforms signals and the Clampetts learn the game. The gentle absurdity that defines the Beverly Hillbillies reaches one of its most endearing and elaborately choreographed peaks when the Clampett family, driven by Jethro Bodine's romantic desperation, determines that mastery of American football holds the secret to winning the heart of Linda Curry. What begins as a simple desire to understand the game unfolding on their cherished color television rapidly expands into a full-scale comic education conducted on the lawn of the Beverly Hills mansion. Mr. Drysdale, ever alert to opportunities that might strengthen his hold on the Clampett fortune, arrives with an air of self-important athletic expertise that the script dissects with affectionate precision. He declares that he was once known as the Iron Man of Michigan and Minnesota, a boast that Buddy Ebsen's Jed Clampett receives with the quiet, slightly skeptical courtesy that formed the bedrock of his performance. The subsequent revelation that this vaunted history actually refers to a vacant lot situated at the corner of Michigan and Minnesota streets is delivered with the perfect deadpan timing that made Ebsen's work so memorable. The humor arises not from open mockery but from the gentle exposure of urban pretension colliding with rural practicality. A collision the series staged again and again with unfailing warmth. Max Baer Jr.'s Jethro throws himself into the enterprise with the characteristic physical gusto that defined his portrayal of the character. The script shows him struggling into a complete football uniform that proves comically ill-suited to his large and enthusiastic frame. Every time he leans forward to receive a handoff or execute a prescribed movement, his helmet slips down over his eyes, prompting the patient correction from Jed that the object in question is not a hat but protective gear. The visual comedy of a hill country giant attempting to master the precise footwork and twisted leg stances of the modern game while constrained by pads, pants, and an unfamiliar helmet would have been a gift to Baer's energetic physical style. Jed himself, pressed into reluctant service as a fellow participant, finds the uniform binding and repeatedly attempts to skip the more elaborate maneuvers. His dry observation that he would rather not risk the entire neighborhood seeing him should the pants slip reveals the quiet dignity Ebsen always brought even to the broadest physical situations. The uniform becomes both a comic prop and a symbol of the family's willingness to adapt to strange new customs in the service of Jethro's heartfelt if misguided courtship. Irene Ryan's Granny and Donna Douglas's Ellie Mae are drafted into the impromptu team with equal parts confusion and good-natured cooperation. The play-calling sequence that follows becomes a highlight of pure verbal and physical farce. Jethro, convinced that he is mastering the mysterious art of signals, begins shouting strings of numbers with mounting intensity: 37, 52, 23 skidoo. He attempts to orchestrate a complex exchange of the ball from Jed to Granny to Ellie and finally back to himself at a point near the watching Linda. The choreography collapses into cheerful chaos when Jethro, eyes fixed on the impression he hopes to make, crashes headlong into a wall. His dazed recovery, accompanied by the question "Are you all right?" and the subsequent arrival of Linda herself, who is far more interested in the spectacle than in any romantic implication, underscore the show's consistent refusal to treat its characters with cruelty. The humor remains affectionate even at its broadest. Mr. Drysdale's coaching style supplies further layers of satire. He instructs Miss Hathaway to serve as quarterback and positions himself as the running halfback, then demands that the old peach skin be slapped firmly into the breadbasket. The resulting confusion, combined with his insistence on demonstrating techniques that appear to have been abandoned decades earlier, paints a portrait of urban self-regard colliding with the Clampetts' straightforward desire to learn. When the family attempts to replicate these maneuvers on their own lawn, the physical comedy expands in every direction. Helmets fall, pants threaten to betray their wearers, the ball is passed with more vigor than accuracy, yet through it all runs the family's fundamental good nature. They are not mocking the game, they are earnestly trying to understand a world that values such elaborate rituals of controlled violence, and they are doing so entirely in the service of Jethro's romantic hopes. The historical context of the mid-1960s deepens every comic beat. Professional football was rapidly becoming a national obsession. The National Football League was expanding its television presence, and color broadcasts were transforming the visual experience of the game. Uniforms, once relatively simple, had become more elaborate and protective. The spectacle of the game itself had grown more theatrical. The Clampetts' sudden passion for the sport, born not of genuine fandom but of romantic necessity, gently satirizes the era's growing consumer culture around athletic entertainment. Jed's quiet wisdom remains the moral center of the sequence. When he agrees to summon Mr. Drysdale for instruction, he does so with the same calm practicality he once applied to oil wells and mountain living. The family's willingness to don strange uniforms and shout incomprehensible signals reflects their enduring openness to new experiences, even when those experiences leave them bruised, baffled, and occasionally flat on the ground. Throughout these sequences, the ensemble work shines with the effortless harmony that made the series a lasting success. Bear's Jethro remains endearingly single-minded, convinced that fancy running and catching will secure Linda's affection. When he declares that the uniforms sure get the women, the line is delivered with such wholehearted belief that the audience laughs with him rather than at him. Douglas's Ellie Mae participates with the tomboy energy that made her character so appealing, throwing the ball with genuine enthusiasm even as the larger plan collapses around her. Ryan's Granny mutters darkly about the whole enterprise yet still joins the chain of handoffs, her physical comedy as sharp as her verbal commentary. Ebsen's Jed watches over them all with the patient affection of a man who understands that love, however foolishly pursued, remains a force worth honoring. The football fever that grips the Clampett household thus becomes more than a comic set piece. It is a celebration of the family's unpretentious willingness to adapt, stumble, and laugh at themselves in the pursuit of another's happiness. The script's attention to the practical difficulties of the uniform itself rewards close examination. Jed's repeated complaints about the binding nature of the gear, his tendency to lose his helmet whenever he leans forward, and his decision to skip the more complicated footwork all serve as gentle reminders that the Clampetts approach the modern world on their own terms. They are willing to try, but they will not entirely abandon the practical common sense that has always guided them. When Jethro insists on wearing the full uniform to pick up Linda, the family's resigned acceptance of this decision reflects both their affection for the young man and their understanding that his romantic imagination operates according to its own logic. The later observation that he might have to keep the uniform on a spell after the girl learns what he is really like is delivered with the dry humor that characterized the series at its best. Mr. Drysdale's own athletic pretensions receive equally careful comic treatment. His claim to have been the Iron Man of Michigan and Minnesota is undercut almost immediately by the geographical clarification, yet he continues to coach with undiminished authority. The sequence in which he attempts to demonstrate proper technique while Miss Hathaway looks on with growing alarm captures the character's blend of self-importance and genuine if misguided helpfulness. Raymond Bailey's performance in the role always balanced the banker's greed with a certain bumbling sincerity, and the football coaching scenes allow that balance to emerge with particular clarity. When he later agrees to order a new color set in exchange for Linda's continued kindness to Jethro, the transaction reveals the calculating side of his nature even as the surrounding comedy softens the edges of that calculation. The physical comedy of the training sessions themselves deserves extended consideration. The script describes Jethro calling signals with elaborate numerical sequences, then expecting the ball to be passed according to a precise choreography that involves every member of the family. The resulting chaos: Granny receiving the ball, Ellie attempting to throw it, Jethro racing toward a predetermined spot near Linda only to collide with a wall, creates a sequence of visual gags that would have been staged with the precise timing the series directors and performers had perfected over many seasons. The humor never depends on the characters looking merely foolish. Instead, it arises from their wholehearted commitment to an enterprise they only partially understand. That commitment is itself a form of dignity, and the audience is invited to admire it even while laughing at the results.